Welcome to 30 Flirty and Panicking, your go-to podcast for embracing the unexpected and building a life you love. I'm Kelsey, and today we're sitting down with mindfulness educator, podcast host, speaker, and author Case Kenny. In addition to doing all of those things, Case also shares beautifully written words that feel like instant doses of optimism with his more than 1.2 million followers on social media. He's going to give us a masterclass in mindfulness today that, if you let it, can truly change your life. So I want to waste no time. Let's get into it. Case Kenny, welcome to 30 Flirty and Panicking.
Hello, good to be here. Good to be, I'm in my 30s, so I'm 37, flirty, I guess, and panicking sometimes. So there you go.
Trying
Aligned.
not to.
Aligned.
I will say to you, my algorithm has been working overtime this year. I've kind of been laughing about it, but I first came across your profile on Instagram it was like about a year ago now. And I saw one of your posts and I was like, what in the Godwinks is this? Like, how did these words find me right now? And it's funny because I went onto Instagram this week in preparation for our conversation to try to see if it would tell me when I did start following you. And it was like 4 weeks after truly the most painful day. And a feature I didn't know Instagram had was it would actually show me what posts I liked of yours, which was kind of funny. Among the several posts that I liked was there's a version of you on the other side of this pain who's laughing, thriving, and so grateful you let go of what wasn't meant for you. Your best life doesn't always need a plan. It just requires the courage to say that chapter is closed. Let's start a new one. And you can't dim someone who learned to shine in the dark. You drop these words of wisdom, and for anybody who's watching, I will share them visually so people can see. But you drop these words of wisdom, I think, in a way that manages to put people at ease and kind of instantly give them a dose of positivity, but B, probably leaves people wondering how in the world you have all of this wisdom to share and all of these positive thoughts to share, which we'll get into. But before we do, you sit here today as a writer, a podcast host, someone with, more than 1 million followers on Instagram, but this didn't all come overnight. So can you start us off by just sharing a bit about how you got here?
Yeah, of course. And thank you for the compliment. And that means a lot. I mean, that's the mission, right? To do the work, to do the writing, to create the thing and have it find people who need it when they need it. Like, that's the mission. So thank you for sharing that with me. I mean, the long of the short is, so I am 37. I started writing online in like 2014. I started this whole mission, though, the podcast, the introspection, the reflection, in 2018. I started the podcast, similar to you, perhaps. I started the podcast as a challenge to myself to know myself. I worked in advertising sales for a long time, for like 12 years. When I was like 29, I had just gotten out of a relationship. I was full hog doing sales. I started as an account executive, worked my way up to regional vice president. I was good at it. I was traveling a lot. And I just felt this disconnect between like my personal life and my career, in that the career, there's a blueprint. Like, you follow it, you're good at it, you make money, you rise up, you get promoted, you lead a team. And I was like, oh, I know who I am. I'm Case. I'm a sales guy. We close deals. We take clients out. We entertain them. I was in New York all the time, based in Chicago, traveling, doing all this stuff. Easy. Follow the blueprint, do the thing. I didn't like the fact that I felt like a different person in other areas of my life, as a friend, as a human, as a partner, as a son, as a brother. I just didn't like the fact that there were like different versions of Case.
Yeah.
I was like, I want to be the same guy, just in different contexts, but I felt very lost in my like personal, soulful depth of life. So the long and the short is, I just started the podcast. I was like, I need a way to force myself to have perspective on life, to be able to say, this is why I'm doing this thing. This is why I feel this way. And 2018 podcasting was a little less common at the time.
Yeah.
Especially the format of solo hosted podcasting, and double, especially the format of a guy sharing his feelings on a podcast. So I saw it as like this creative and vulnerable way to force myself to do that. And the rest is history from there. I mean, I've done 700 episodes. It got picked up by Sirius XM Media 3 years ago. Then I started writing on Instagram. So that came second, actually. That was like, how can I take the things I talk about and distill it down to 14 words? Created some journals, wrote some books, started doing live events. And the rest is history. And really all it is a reflection of my passion for one word, which is mindfulness, which means different things to different people. But I talk a lot about mindfulness, what it is, how we speak to ourselves. And really, I'm just a big fan of optimism. And that's what I get when I do the podcast. That's what I share when I write the quotes. That's what I encourage people to unearth when I do my events is how can I help people and myself be more optimistic, have a point of view, realize that feelings are temporary, realize that things can change. There isn't permanence associated with feelings. And that's optimism. So that's my whole mission. And yeah, I came from a pretty normal place. I never set out to do self help. And in fact, if you had talked to me when I was 28 when I started, I was kind of skeptical, cynical a little bit.
Yeah.
Definitely wasn't a big feelings guy or vulnerability guy. And now, for lack of a better term, I just say I share my feelings for a living, which feels accurate and feels right and feels honest. So that's the thing. That's what we're doing.
I love it. And you say you weren't one to really pay attention to your feelings or to get in there. What do you think it was that helped you to flip that switch? Because I do think that's one thing I've learned is like how important it really is to be in touch and not sprint away and
Yeah.
learn.
Well, I would say two things. I would say, for one, I forced myself. I was
Yeah.
like, I'm going to do the podcast to force myself. Like, I needed a catalyst. I needed a creative thing to be like, okay, I'm going to do it. I also think there's a lot of value in like big swings, big 180s sometimes, right?
Hmm.
So I was like, if I'm going to, you know, share my feelings, I'm going to be the guy who shares his feelings for a living. I don't always believe in like big, hyperbole, but I was like, man, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to really own it. So I really stepped into that. I thought that was helpful. So I'm not like skirting the line. And then the biggest thing that helped me is once I started to do it, you realize how essential it is to knowing yourself, to inventing and reinventing yourself, and that just the peace and clarity that comes from introspection.
Yeah.
I mean, it very quickly I realized that it wasn't like vulnerability or sensitive or feelings time. Those are just words. It was literally just the art of knowing yourself. And what more masculine, mature, wise thing to do than to know yourself. So it very quickly became valuable to me. Like I always say, I do the podcast for myself first and other people second. As much as that sounds a little selfish, I think
No.
it's a good place to operate from. I've changed so much as a man, partner, boyfriend, business partner, everything
Yeah.
by doing the pod. So yeah, the proof is in the pudding. Like it's very helpful. So that's why
Yeah.
I do it.
You talk about mindfulness. Obviously, that's at the core of everything that you do. I think that's just this big, vague word for some people. They don't quite know how to get their hands around it. What is mindfulness to you, and how does it come into play in your day to day life?
Yeah, keep it really simple. I mean, there's no wrong definition for mindfulness, and a mindful habit could literally be anything. For me, I say it's two things. The first of which is one that we're all kind of like, yeah, that's mindfulness. The first is mindfulness is listening to yourself, right? It's bringing mind and body to the same place. It's being present in that moment. It's feeling what you feel. It's being non judgmental of what you feel. It's accepting it. It's surrendering to it. It's sitting in that space, right? It's feeling sharing. It's being honest with yourself. It's listening to yourself. Great. The second definition is the one that's really changed my life and is the output of all my work, which is mindfulness is listening to yourself. And perhaps more importantly, mindfulness is talking to yourself. After we sit in those feelings, how do we speak to ourselves about them? This is the source of optimism in life. So if I had to really say it, I would say mindfulness is optimism. Optimism being the belief that things can change in life, that a bad feeling isn't permanent, that rejection isn't a representation of who you are, that feeling behind isn't accurate, all these things that we prescribe permanence to. Optimism is the belief that things can change. And that starts with the words that we use to speak to ourselves, right? So it's the understanding that I have a feeling doesn't define me. I can choose words that honor the feeling, but give me room to be hopeful. The biggest example I always give that's super simple and pretty lightweight is like I do a lot of speaking. I've been on the Today Show, for instance. Like I've done
Nice.
like
Love
some big
it.
things, and it's amazing. And I get nervous, right? When I'm in front of a crowd, I get nervous. It's my gut reaction to say, "Whew, man, am I nervous?" Accurate feeling, sure, I'm honoring the feeling, but the hope, the way I speak to myself, the optimism is, man, you know what? A part of me feels nervous, but the reality is I'm really excited. The space between that, the emotional vocabulary, the way we speak to ourselves, that is mindfulness. And that is life changing because it takes emotions that we allow to pull ourselves down, that allow to become permanent fixtures of our identity, and it honors it, but it pivots it. And that's basically what my work does. So a lot of the quotes, frankly, that you read are like, you've been through this thing, you've felt this weight, this thing happened to you, you made this mistake, but part two, and kind of represents the idea.
I love it. And you are a big fan of journaling. It's evident in the fact that you have put journals out that are wildly successful. One of which happens to be conveniently
Hey,
30,
look at
Flirty,
that.
Panicking, Coloring. We did that on purpose, obviously. I'm sure you
Look at
had this
that.
in mind those years ago. They really are amazing prompts, like in just looking through them. And I can understand how when you implement things like this in your day to day life, it's naturally going to help pave that path for you as you're describing. Why do you feel so strongly about journaling?
Yeah, well, I would say two things. I would say, for one, there's a lot of neuroscience behind mind and body when it comes to taking a thought and writing it down. So I'll put that there. A
Yeah.
lot of value there. Uh, Second, I mean, I what makes a thought real? You know, just living in the ether of your head, does that make it real? To me, like, unless I can apply one of my senses to it, namely touch and sight, I don't know if it's so real. So I'm a big proponent of writing things down for the reason that it allows for you to see the thought and actually freeze the thought. Like, our brain is really good at some things. Namely, it's really good at keeping us safe, or what it thinks is safe, right? So the brain is really good at being like, hey, don't forget that because that hurt you in the past. And what about that anxious thought? Isn't that, we're trying to keep you safe here, right? So
Right.
the brain is really good at retaining retention. That's retention of past mistakes. That's retention of current anxieties. That's retention of future worries. It's really good at that because it's a survival mechanism. Like, thank God, right? It's great. It's not so good, I have found, at the same time allowing you to process and work through those things. So I've just found, as simply put as I can, it's to write it on paper freezes that retention and moves it to intention. Now you could actually breathe a little bit. It's the same reason, like, if you have a big decision, if you were to change careers or something, you might write a pros and cons chart down of doing, should I leave this job or move this city or what, break up with this person. Something about visualizing it is helpful neurologically, sociologically, but also because of the way that the brain works. At least in my head, it's not so good at those parallel tasks. So literally, that's it. And there's also an element too of like, I lead a lot of these sessions, like, creative writing almost.
Yeah.
Like, there's something different about your head on autopilot, but writing with intention. You choose better words, you choose the right words because you actually have to write it out, and that takes labor. So it just brings a little bit more intentionality to it. And then the overarching, of course, is like being a daily journaler. Like, if you journal daily, you're practicing listening to yourself daily. You're practicing talking to yourself daily.
Yeah.
That's developing optimism daily. It's an amazing thing. So, all those combined, that's why I'm so passionate about it.
Yeah, it all makes sense. And I do find that as well. I sometimes will get caught up in the craziness of day to day life. But when I do take the time and I'm on a good stretch of doing that, it just changes how you feel. And speaking of writing, I want to take us back. I'm going to bounce all over in this conversation. I want to take
Let's
us
bounce.
back to the Instagram where we started this conversation. You write these words, like I said, and I think that so many of us feel like they're speaking directly to us or make us feel very seen and provide that dose of hope. I want to talk to you about your process with that. How do you arrive at the words that you share each day? Are they words that you feel you've needed to hear? How do you get there?
Yeah, so I'd say it's art and science. On the more science logistical front, good artists and good writers are always being inspired. So I have a 600-page Google Doc with just things that I've written down, things that I've heard, things that I think are cool, poems, little snippets, things that other people have said and written. And I store it in there and I just let it marinate. And I'm always marinating, I'm always inspired by it. And then my writing comes from that. Like, most of my writing comes from my personal experience, and the rest, maybe even 50%, comes in reaction to what other people have said. And this is how the whole thing started, right? Because when I was in my 20s, I felt like I didn't have truth and direction. I was just borrowing from other people. So when someone else says, healthy love is defined by, and then they write something, I'm like, oh, that's a good take. What do I think healthy love is defined by? So I'll take that first four words that they wrote with, and then I'll write 20 of my own versions of my own truths, of my own wisdoms or insights or clarity that I believe is a healthy reflection of a relationship. And to me, for one, that's like great writing is in reaction to life and to other people's perspectives, but it also illuminates the whole concept here of creating your own truth. So that's pretty much the process. And, I do a lot of like series where it's like the same idea, but written 8 different ways.
Yeah.
Again, to capture that, like I write a lot about like green flags, right? Like I'm sick of red flags. So I'm like, I want to write about green flags.
Yeah.
So I'll write a green flag is this, a green flag is that, just to like give scope to the idea that there's many different ways to evaluate partnerships and yourself. So yeah, it's pretty much that. And then, I handwrite them and then I take a picture and then I post it.
I was going to say you have this signature red text situation going on. How did you arrive at that?
That was honestly like some people are always like, oh, like why red? Red is violent and aggressive. I just thought red popped on a piece of paper and
Yeah.
stood out online. So it
Hmm.
was that simple. And I like red. I think it's cool. You're wearing red.
I'm a
I
very big
mean, here
fan
we
of
go.
red, if you can't tell.
There you go.
This is my work
Yeah, it's a good
outfit. I
color.
didn't leave time to change.
It, yeah, it commands attention. It's cool. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks. Like I said, there are so many of us who see those. And now, by the way, I love looking at people's comments. And because you post in the way that you do, people will call out which one they identify with more. It
Right.
is very thought provoking, which is really neat. I don't want to put you on the spot, but 30, Flirty, and Panicking really is all about embracing change and navigating change and harnessing the power that you hold to kind of move through life and make it what you want it to be. And like we've discussed, you have no shortage of wisdom on your side. So I would love to rapid fire a couple of different situations and you can drop some words of wisdom for someone who might be in that spot.
Yeah. It's rock and roll.
Okay. For someone who is in the throes of heartbreak, just feeling completely shattered in the aftermath of a breakup, what do you got?
Oh, geez. Well, there's a lot there. I mean, I think the first thing, the best thing you can do, outside of all the other things, like surround yourself with friends, be active, like move your body, do stuff like that, is like where we really double down on pain is when we turn it to suffering, right? That's what makes a breakup so much worse. Is when any breakup's going to be painful, but does it have to become suffering? And suffering comes from prescribing intention to it, right? Purposeful, hurtful intention. And of course, there are some instances where that's true, but the majority of breakups are we don't have to do that. Can we sit down, perhaps even, and prove to ourselves that the breakup was not about your worth? It's not about your inability to find love. It's not about your falling behind. All it was about incompatibility.
Mhm.
And I think that the sooner you could write that down and prove that to yourself versus some nefarious thing about intention and hurt and hate and all these things, I think you'll free yourself from that as best you can. So I'd say, in the aftermath, the best you can you write down the ways that you were incompatible so that you could be like, well, yeah, we clearly weren't compatible. Why would I even want to be with this person or this kind of person? Not to villainize, just to prove to yourself that the breakup was about incompatibility. It wasn't about worth. And
Mhm.
it's not a reflection of some permanent status of being single. So somewhere in there is an answer.
I love that. Yeah, that's a good one. It's a good thing it happened and we step forward now. Okay, a person who's in a job that they dread every single day.
Well, I try to live in reality. I feel like sometimes I live in la la land because I write quotes on the internet for a living. I've figured it out. I mean I do. I live I worked hard for this, don't get me wrong, but like I get to do the thing that I love, which is rare. But I also worked a job for a long time that I did enjoy. I did like sales and I liked the people I worked with, but um I mean the long and the short is get out of there. Go find another job.
Uh-huh.
It's not that simple, of course, but what can you start doing on the side that would give you fulfillment? I did the podcast on the side for almost 3 years before I quit to do it full time. That gave me a lot of fulfillment, right? Because let's be real, you've got to pay bills. It is the reality of living. You have to have a job,
Yep.
you need insurance.
Yep.
What can you start? What can you do in the evening? What can you do in the morning? How could you complement that? So I'd start there and then realize you do have a capacity to find other work. We just don't want to start over, right? No one wants to be a beginner again. No one wants to work their way up. But I would start with complementary side hustle, side work, whatever it may be. Do it on your own. And then ultimately, I mean, you have the capacity. You did it once at your job, you could do it again, I would say.
Totally. All right. Somebody who's somewhere in their 30s and they cannot stop looking at the figurative clock, feels the pressure to check the boxes to settle down, is just stuck in that that thought process?
Oh, Lord of mercy. Well, let's hone in on the phrase you used, settle down. I really don't like that word.
I know you
In
don't.
fact, so I have this book, it's called The Opposite of Settling. Originally, I called it the opposite of settling down because that's how strongly I feel about this word.
Interesting.
I not in the sense of like the general understanding of settle down, meaning find a partner in commitment and you're not dating around. Big fan of that. I don't like the phrasing settle down because settle down, it has such negative energy to it.
Mhm.
It settle down. I don't want to settle down. I want to settle up. I want to find a person I can get more out of life. More energy, more everything. The way that we say that sometimes, and we don't mean it, of course, but subconsciously, when we say settle down, I think it's robbing us of the entire purpose of being single and being in a relationship, which is the same, which is to get as much as humanly possible out of life. So I'd I'd really encourage people like, yes, I understand ticking clock, biological imperatives, society, pressure, your parents, like I get all of that. But I think we really need to understand that like I'm a big proponent of the phrase build a life you love and love will find you there. The whole point of life is to figure out what makes you love life and to be joyous and fulfilled. The purpose of a relationship is to amplify that.
Right.
But if we don't have something to amplify, what's the point of a relationship?
Right.
So live your freaking life. I understand pressure. I really do. Focus on living your life as vibrantly as intensely as you can. Not only as a way so that when someone comes along, you could actually say, do they amplify happiness? Do I even know what happiness is? But also because to put it in my own language, I think being your most passionate and joyful self, it's a filter for the wrong people and it's a magnet for the right people.
Yeah.
It'll literally help you find that person. But if you're operating out of loneliness, you know how who was it said John Lennon didn't he said that the two main motivating factors in life are love and fear. If you are dating out of fear, uh-uh, you're going to attract the wrong kind of people. Are you dating out of love because you love life and you love yourself? Totally different energy. So I don't know. It's somewhat vague and optimistic, but I really do think it's important to reevaluate what the point of a relationship is. It's to amplify the happiness you've already created. So what happiness have you created? Focus on that.
I think that's beautifully put, and I think that's something that when you look around at people who have very happy and fulfilling and wonderful relationships, you often people will tell you that they took the time and built the life that they felt excited about and made room
Yeah.
for someone to join it along the way.
Yes.
Okay, what about someone who knows that they're capable of something greater or they have this big dream, but they're just too afraid of what other people think?
I would say you got to get over it. I mean, I'm always burdened with imposter syndrome and overthinking, and why would anyone want to listen to what I have to say? Always. The only way to escape that, you're not going to escape that by overthinking it. I'm telling you, you're not going to cure yourself of fear of failure by thinking yourself out of it. It's impossible. It just doesn't work that way. The only way is the hard way, which is to do the thing, get feedback, realize that negative feedback doesn't destroy you, realizing that getting a negative comment doesn't matter. You have to do it. I never used to be like a strong public speaker. Always was a bit of a wallflower and would prefer to listen first and talk last. Now I won't shut up. It came purely through effort. Like I didn't want to do events.
Yeah.
Because again, I was like, who am I? I'm an internet guy. I give advice to the internet. Why would anyone care? I forced myself to start doing these events because it made me nervous and because I was afraid of what people would think. Now I love doing it. It's the only way to overcome.
Do you remember your first event?
I do. I did one. I did a couple at Soho House in Chicago like
Oh,
4 years ago, and it just it changed everything because people were super supportive. And sure, I probably stumbled, and it wasn't the most valuable thing. Perhaps I was probably just yapping about things I enjoyed, but it totally changed it. Now I do. I do them all over. I do them for the NFL. I do them for corporate. All over, and it's given me so much confidence, not only in the literal sense of confidence comes from evidence. Can you create evidence that you did the thing? But also, the more you can get real life feedback, the more imaginary and social media criticism just disappears.
right.
So, yeah, just do the thing. Do the thing.
You just said the word forced again, and that's the same word that you used when you were talking about the podcast, that you kind of like
Yeah.
forced yourself to take these leaps. When you think about the person that you were in 2018, and who you are sitting here in this conversation today. How have you changed and how have all of these decisions affected you?
Well, outside of now, I won't shut up, and in the past, I was, introverted. Outside of that big change, I would say the following. I'm actually like really passionate about this. I did an episode recently. I used to see any negative emotion a piece of resistance, overthinking, fear of failure, getting nervous. I used to see that as a sign that I was doing the wrong thing,
Mm.
right? That means no, right? The body, the mind is inclined to look for inputs as a sign of whether we should stop or continue moving forward. I automatically used to, like many people probably do, if I felt nervous, well, that was because I shouldn't be here. If I felt like some woman was out of my league, well, that's because she's out of my league.
Mhm.
If I felt like I was falling behind in life, that's because I'm falling behind in life. If I felt like I was underqualified for a job, it's because I'm underqualified for a job. I've realized now the difference, and I did an episode on it, the idea of price and punishment. I used to think that when I felt that piece of resistance, it was punishment in the sense of, hey, you're doing the wrong thing. Like you shouldn't be in this room, you shouldn't be dating this person, you shouldn't be trying this entrepreneurial thing. That is the punishment. This is wrong. You need to back up. Now I've realized that that emotion, that negative feeling, that piece of resistance, it's the price. You're paying the price for the thing you want, and it's a sign that you need to keep doing it. So when I feel imposter syndrome, it's not case you're this is wrong, you need to back up. It's keep doing it. This is the sign that the thing that you want is just on the other edge, on the other side. It's like the idea of like don't curse the climb when you asked for the view, right? And I mean that's mindfulness in and of itself, right? The reevaluating of what a feeling means. Doesn't mean stop or doesn't mean go. To me, I've realized that a negative feeling, now for the most part, and there's nuance here. Sometimes a feeling means, hey, you need to get the heck out of here.
Mhm.
But more often than not, that feeling that is literal, just human, normal resistance, it means that you're on the right track, not the wrong track. And now I feel these things. Like I just did a book launch for my book, and I've written a couple books, but this is a big deal because it's with Penguin and Hay House and these publishers, and there's a lot of expectations. And feeling a certain kind of way, nervous, like who's going to buy my book, the whole thing. And like now I feel that feeling and it just fires me up so much. Whereas in the past, it would have been like, I don't belong here. This isn't my thing. And it's a complete 180. So that's kind of who I am now. And it certainly wasn't that person in 2018. And I probably wasn't even that person in like 2020 either. I think it takes time, but you know, it's changed my relationship with emotions.
I loved that episode, by the way. I just, like I said,
Oh,
my path to your work was kind of opposite because it came through Instagram and then
yeah.
inevitably led me to the podcast. And I loved that episode. And I'm glad that you just shared that with this audience here. Since 2018, obviously, life has brought tons of experiences your way. I guess really the thing to say is that you have brought tons of experiences your way. I'm sure you found yourself in rooms with people you otherwise wouldn't have met. I'm sure you having conversations and interacting with people that otherwise wouldn't have crossed your path. Are there words or advice that somebody else has shared with you that have really stuck with you or that you live by in a day to day?
Yes, certainly. Like there are some writers that I've looked up to for a long time that now I call friends and they wrote endorsements for my book and there's just the space that they've created to bring me in has been beautiful and without being too specific there I it's those people who to move from a space of like looking up to them and still looking up to them but being able to call them friends has been incredible. But I usually answer this type of question in the same way. I don't read a lot of like self-help books. I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I don't go on like a lot of retreats. Like my mindful practice comes from sitting down and thinking about the way that I can express myself and going on a long walk and listening to house music and going to Chipotle. Pretty normal stuff. The biggest like catalyst for inspiration in my life is other normal people, specifically Reddit, like the website Reddit.
Yeah.
I get a lot of inspiration and life-changing perspective from normal people on Reddit because they're normal people and it's anonymous and they could be honest. Like one of the most life-changing quotes came from and I've tried to track this person down, never could figure out who they were. It was just an anonymous account. Someone had posed a question on Reddit a couple years ago of like, what life advice would you give?
Yeah.
And the person wrote the following, and I use it all the time because I think it's so powerful. It's the difference between a head full of memories and a head full of regret is your ability to forgive yourself. And that unlocked so many things for me when it comes to like forgiveness and self-forgiveness. And that came from a stranger on the internet.
Yeah.
I didn't have to attend a seminar. There was nothing to buy. That was just powerful. So a lot of stuff like that I get inspired by. Um, so yeah, that's where the inspiration comes from. And my own life, of course.
Speaking of, I don't want to trivialize this conversation, but you did just nod to the fact that there are writers that you looked up to that now are friends of yours. You've got some pretty famous follows and some pretty significant likes along the way. Has there ever been anyone that's reached out to you that like totally caught you by surprise?
I mean, the answer is yes. Like, I mean, like I don't know, recent like Selena Gomez recently shared a quote, and Jessica Alba is always sharing like my book, like actual real life stuff. But then it's also like Conor McGregor. So you have like amazing actresses, philanthropists, MMA fighters. So you know, not I have no opinion on any of those people either way. But it just goes to show the way that not even my life truths, but just like life truths in general impact different people from all kinds of industries. So yeah, like, it goes a long way. Like it means a lot when people do that and share and give credit and comment and show love. So yeah, it keeps me going.
It's funny because I had this kind of pivotal experience last year and shared this much of it. And the way that people responded to it was jaw-dropping to me. Like I couldn't believe it. And since then, I have developed this very strong understanding that we are all human and we are all navigating different things. And when you see something that someone shares that does speak to you, it just further emphasizes that.
And I've also learned a thing or two when it comes to like silent supporters. Like just because people aren't commenting or DMing you does not mean they're not showing you love. Like I see this proven all the time because like I have like a variety of things for sale, books and journals basically, and
Yeah.
um, I remember like recently I got a DM from a woman who had never DM'd me before. Right,
Okay.
I didn't recognize her name. I'll recognize names if you're always commenting or liking, but we had no DM history, so she's never shared anything of mine to her story. She's never messaged me, and she sent me a message about how she's bought like 50 copies of my books and given them to friends and stuff. So like she's been literally financially supporting me, and she never likes or comments or anything, and she's a huge supporter. And even if she didn't do that, like even if she really enjoyed the posts, like I don't know, we're in an interesting time when we look for very specific things to validate what we put out,
Yeah.
and it's sometimes misleading. So I don't know, I get a lot of energy from that, of people who support me silently
Yep.
as well as people who support me in loud ways and things in between. And I'm sure it's the case for you when you share your story and it goes viral, and you know just the way that it helps other people even if they don't speak up about it.
I love that point, and I honestly have never even thought about that. On the other end of that spectrum, as an outsider, when I scroll through some of your posts, right? Like a couple of the comments that just jumped out at me. Jack shared, "Your books and podcasts have helped me out of dark places. Thank you for stepping out of your comfort zone and sharing with us." Felicia said, "I've ordered 9 of your books to share with my daughters. That's bold of you. Has changed my life. It's my favorite book after the Bible." It's
What?
obviously an uncomfortable question for you to answer, but 7 years ago, you hadn't even started this part of your journey, and now to see the way that what you are sharing is affecting people, how does that feel to see?
Yeah, I mean, it's not too often that I like actually think about that, so I appreciate it. I mean, it means everything. I mean, that's the mission. Whether I lose sight of that sometimes or not, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to sell more books or get booked for more things, or like the reality of making a living,
Right.
you lose sight of that. But that was the whole mission. People ask me what the mission is. I say the mission is to help people feel seen and to give them a reason to be hopeful. And all those comments clearly hit the mark, and some of them are are hyperbole, and it feels really good. I don't have the most poetic answer, but that in addition to like doing difficult, awkward, cringy things, that is what on those days when I'm unsure if I want to do it or not, that's what keeps me going. I
Right.
remember, in fact, even before I started the podcast, I had this email thing going back in like 2014, 15, 16, where I was, writing online and sending out a daily email, and it got pretty big. I had like 100,000 subscribers at one point, but it's a difficult business to run because you're always just like churning users and
Right.
using advertisers. It's a whole thing. And I was about to give up on it. And I was about to give up just like writing in general because I put all my eggs in that basket. And I was at Lollapalooza in Chicago. I don't know, maybe I was 25 at that point. So I had like my shirt off and I was drinking a tall beer or something there. And some dude, some like big dude came up to me. He was like, "Hey, you Case?" I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, I love." It was called Pursuit. He's like, "I love Pursuit, man. Keep it up." And he doesn't realize how much of an impact that had on me. But I didn't quit because of just the impact that moment had on me. And I don't know if I had quit, I probably wouldn't have started the podcast because I probably would have just given up on the arts and the the creative. But like that meant so much to me, and I always think back to that. And now I get lots of little moments like that, but that one in particular.
I love that. I also just learned that about you in my discovery of the podcast. I went back and actually started with the earliest, like your first ever
Oh
episode, and you
man.
shared that journey. I thought that was very interesting.
Oh, I did. Cool. I don't know if I could bring myself to listen back to some of those episodes. I feel like I'd be a little cringe, although I'm a big proponent of being cringe. But how much I know myself now versus how much I thought I knew myself in 2018 is probably a eye opener.
Yeah, I'm
So
sure you've
maybe you
grown
do
a
that and
lot.
report back.
I'm sure it
Right.
sounded great to me, and I'm sure
All
you've
right.
grown a lot. So that means it's working, right? That's kind of what you set out to do.
Exactly. There you go. And maybe there you go. That's a good piece of optimism. The fact that I'm not that person in some way is an indicator that I'm doing the right thing.
Yeah,
I like that.
I would say so. You posted just the other day that this month is going to be full of answered prayers. And I loved that. And it made me think about what that would look like for me. What would a month full of answered prayers look like for you?
Oh, man, that's such a great question. I don't think I've thought about that for myself specifically. I think, well, again, my life is art and science, and I'm focused a lot on like the book and like proving myself as an author because I want to write a book every like 18 months to 2 years, and this is like one of the first ones on the traditionally published side, so it's important. So I think I'm excited to prove to myself that I could do it and write something I'm proud of and do the thing and make a life out of it because that's really what I want to do. I don't want to be an influencer or anything like that. I want to author and
Yeah.
do that. So I think I'm excited to prove that to myself, and I'm excited to get up every day and try again and write more things and grow along the way. So I think that I'm also looking forward to finding like more stability. Like my girlfriend and I are like trying to figure out where we kind of want to like settle like
Land.
somewhat permanently, and
Yeah.
my family as well, to be close with them. So some things around that. But I'd say between those two things, I'm gonna have my hands full. So
Some good things to have your hands full with.
yeah.
Your new book, The Opposite of Settling, is available now. Can you share a little bit about what it's about, other than the obvious, and why you decided it was important for you to write it right now?
Yes. Well, so to build on our previous conversation, it is about the opposite of settling. It's about the opposite of settling down. It's about the opposite of anything in your love life, but that starts in your normal life, your inner life,
Mhm.
that would threaten, I call it your spark, right? Your sense of self, your sense of independence. I wrote it from that perspective because I was so fired up about the word settling. I was so fired up about the word settling down. But I also wrote it from the perspective of um I literally, chapter 1 is about independence and how the right relationship fuels your independence as opposed to threatening it, right? Because that's such a trope, right? That you're like, oh yeah, you lose your sense of independence. I'm like, I hear things like that, and I'm like, so you lose the whole point of life of having a sense of self. Cannot cannot happen. Refuse
No.
to let that happen. And then I also think back to my 20s, stereotypical straight dude here. Think about the reasons that some of my relationships didn't work out. A lot of it came from the assumption that a relationship would rob me of my manly independence. That's both my spiritual independence to be whoever I am, my ego independence of being able to prove my worth through relationships, whatever. Relationship's going to rob me of my independence. What
Right.
I've realized now, both through maturing, introspection, and then my girlfriend, is that the right relationship fuels your independence. You literally become more independent because you have this person who's your ride or die. And I talk in the book about it. It's called the dependency paradox. It's something that you see in adolescence, but the idea then goes into how I see the purpose of a relationship is to have someone, I call it settling up, that is getting more out of life together.
Yep.
Security, call it a secure attachment that empowers you to be more independent. And then the rest of the book is just pure optimism around the purpose of life and the purpose of love, and to see the intersection of the two, not as two halves coming together so you finally get the meaning of life. The analogy that I use, not to remove the power of love in any sense, but I said that like the right relationship is like finding a fry at the bottom of a bag. You already ate the meal. you're satisfied. The fry comes along and you're like, yes, this is amazing. This is fantastic. Like to be able to look at love in that sense as opposed to the whole meal and to derive a really strong sense of clarity from it. And yeah, so what's the book? It's very optimistic.
I'm laughing because somebody yesterday said to me, they asked my opinion on something and I answered, and they were like, "Oh, so you're saying you have the meal and then the man would just be the seasoning?" And I'm like, "Yeah, kind of."
Well said.
I'm okay until that happens. Anyways, you just shared a great deal about the book, and I'm appreciative of that. And by the way, I think everyone who's listening is probably running to add it to their cart right now. Is there one additional tidbit on top of what you just shared that you can leave us with that's, a takeaway of sorts or something that we can implement into our lives right now to avoid settling?
I have a million things. I would even mention something that's not really in the book, but it's the ethos of the book. It's actually something I wrote a book in 2020 called Single is Your Superpower. I tend to write from my experience. I wrote that when I was single. I wrote this as a result of new perspective.
Yeah.
And it's basically just the idea of like, I used to like, and I still do, but it's not something I do as often. I used to really, anytime I could get my hands on like an older person, like 60 plus, I would ask them like, hey, what do you regret in life? Um, and I got all kinds of great pieces of perspective. And I got a lot of answers, if not the majority of answers, were within the context of love, dating, divorce, kids, the whole thing.
Yeah.
I never heard anyone say, I regret being single. Every
Interesting.
regret in the context of love came from being in a relationship too soon, defining your happiness by a partner, rushing, staying, all these things. And I always just thought that was so interesting. And I'm a big love guy,
Yeah.
but I'm also a big proponent of being single. I'm certain like I don't waver either way. I don't have a strong like stance on it, but like take that for what it's worth as far as regrets go in life. Like you'll never regret being single for you might feel in the moment, you might very much you will, of course. You'll feel behind. You'll feel all kinds of heavy emotions, but take that perspective for what it's worth. None of those people ever regretted being single. And then back to our conversation about life and the seasoning, like create a life that tastes really good on its own and then
Right.
comes along and you season it. And because that's what like I, I can go on and on about it, but like I even did an episode today, like on twin flames, on like the pressure we put on ourselves for these one person. Yes, in a relationship, it is about the person, but it's about the experience. It's about the experience that you create together. Like we're so focused on the person. Does this person, are they this? Do they
Right.
look this? Do they have this? And of course, a lot of those things are important because of the actions that come from those things. But at the end of the day, like it's the experience that you're creating that you need to evaluate. And the majority of the experience of a relationship is boring.
Yeah.
It is in between moments. It is
Mhm.
bullshitting with someone at Costco and joking in the like it is that kind of stuff. It's not the big intense moments. Those are fantastic, of course, but the majority of your life, of your career, and of your relationship are those in between moments. And that's where we really need to identify. And I talk in the book a lot about playfulness. Like I have a chapter, my editor made me change it, but I literally wanted to call it being a silly goose because I think the point of a relationship is to be two silly gooses coming together and to be literally as goofy as possible because that's the majority of your life
I
is
like
that kind of
that.
stuff. It's not the trips to Paris and
Right.
the PJs to the Maldives, like great stuff and go off and do it, but it's the little stuff. And
Yeah.
that's where we need to find commonality, the experience there. And I don't know, to me that kind of stuff makes me really hopeful, and I share a lot about like what that looks like in life so that you could find it and create it and to be at peace until you do. So, yeah.
I love that. I'm also cracking up at what you said about yourself because my friends troll me because they're like, at every wedding that we're at every bar, you are somehow in the corner with some 60-year-old woman asking her about her life. And I'm like, yeah, because they're wiser and they know more. And it's just fascinating to me. Like, I love learning from
Yeah,
people who've
cool. You're
done
gonna you're gonna be so wise with that perspective. Yeah. Yeah. Get perspective where you can, especially from older generations. They might not have the most current up to date
right.
context for certain things, but they've got some like soulful wisdom.
I like listening to people's stories.
Me too. Me too.
In general, it's kind of similar to what we touched on in our little rapid fire exercise. But obviously, at the core of this podcast, is the thought that it is so easy to look on your social media feed or look around you in the room that you're in or really consume anything and feel like you are behind somehow, to have that panic that sets in as you see engagement ring after engagement ring, so on and so forth. What would you say to people who may be struggling with those intrusive thoughts, if you will, about timeline? What words of wisdom can you offer them?
I would encourage people to understand, like, yes, it's a normal thing for one, that's fine. 2, I don't like I don't think we're necessarily stressing because we feel like we're falling behind. We stress similar to the question about pain turned to suffering.
Mhm.
We're stressing because of the meaning that we then apply because we feel like we're falling behind, right? We're falling behind. Well, that means something's wrong with me. I'm unlovable, I'm too much, I'm too this. And even if we don't say it verbally or consciously, like that becomes the subconscious belief. So I think that's really where we should get at, um, is the belief system that is perhaps we're labeling upon ourselves. And then in the book, I talked a lot about like there's some great studies because again, I could talk about this and word it all pretty, but it's not always enough for me even. Like there's some great studies around. There's one called the liking gap, which basically proves in social sciences circles that you're more likable than you give yourself credit for. And most people are, in fact, in that we're so hypercritical of ourselves and other people aren't. I also did a chapter on nonconformity, aka being weird, on
Mhm.
how absolutely freaking powerful it is. Back to my sentiment on weirdness and passion as a filter for the wrong people, but a magnet for the right people. Focus on that kind of stuff instead of the negativity that comes from feeling behind. Let's get to the thing that comes from that. And that's how we could really draw a line in the sand and realize that, the negative things that we want to say about ourselves aren't true and that we just keep on living and keep on loving and believe in the inevitability of our fulfillment. Like I talk a lot about loneliness as a topic. I have a metaphor that I think is powerful, that when you have a strong sense of self and you know what you bring to the table and you practice what you preach, that like feeling lonely is like the empty stretches on a highway between exits,
Yeah.
but you know that there's exits,
Yeah.
right? So you know that it's not forever. And so it's your job when you've kept yourself in check and you're doing the right things, you put the windows down, you put on some music and you know the exit's coming up. That's called belief. That's called optimism. But you know that they're coming up because you're doing the right things. And again, that's very simple and there's nuance to life. But I don't know. I find that when you actually sit down and you give yourself credit for all the things you're doing and you identify perhaps the gaps of the things you're not doing and then you start doing them, all you can literally do is just live your life and love your life and build a life you love and love will find you there. And it's that simple. It's that simple.
Yeah. I love that. Beautifully said. Drop the mic. Is there something I haven't asked you, Case, that you feel like is really important or at the core of what it is that you want people to take away from you?
I mean, the thing that I always find myself repeating in any scenario is like, there's a lot of books and helpful people out there that are, have dating tactics and rules to dating and this and that. And I wrote this book, and a lot of my whole ethos is that I feel like we feel burdened by expectations and rules, that it makes things a little bit more troublesome.
Yeah.
And I have a quote that I've been repeating for years that I always say, especially when I like speak to like college kids or something, I'll say, there's no right way to live your life, but there's a wrong way. And the wrong way is to think that there's a right way. Just basically the idea that if you're always thinking that someone else's version of success or happiness or a relationship is one you need to emulate, you're gonna get further and further potentially from the thing that you actually need and want and deserve. And especially in 2025, 2026, where there's no rules for anything. I mean, look at everything has gone to shit in the best way and the worst way. But it's just proof that is there's no right way for anything anymore.
Yeah.
And I think that's so powerful, especially in dating where we really get in our heads and we let other people get in our heads. Like I love a good group chat, but sometimes that stuff is just so misleading and you need to not take the advice sometimes
Yeah.
because that's their truth and that's right for them. And that's a red flag that he didn't do this, but to you, who gives? I don't care. I don't need that.
Yeah.
What do you need? Figure out the right way for you. Don't blindly chase the right way for other people because that becomes the wrong way for you unless you check in. So I would say that it's a bit of a tongue twister, but I find it to be helpful.
No, I love that. What's next for Case Kenny? Last question.
What's next? Well, the book, I wanted to be doing more events. Like they give me so much life. So, you'll catch me in one of your cities soon. I'm all over the place doing them. I call them mantra, where you come and you write and you leave with a mantra. So more of that. More music. I work with a lot of artists and musicians. I love dance music, and there's something so intrinsically tied with dance music and emotion.
Yeah.
Um, Both structurally, just like a break, build, drop in life, and I really get a lot of joy from doing that and working with artists. Yeah, I'd say those three things are my focus.
That's very cool. And where, if people want to find out where you are headed to or want to follow along with your work, where can they find that information?
My Instagram or casekenny.com.
Case, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you doing this. It's very cool of you and extremely valuable both to me and to hopefully every single person listening to this conversation.
Of course. Thank you for having me. I'm Case Kenny, and I hope listeners leave this episode feeling 30, flirty, and delusional.
Guys, that was mindfulness educator, podcast host, speaker, author Case Kenny. As you heard, he is a wealth of wisdom. So go give him a follow at case.kenny on Instagram or check out his website. And if you liked the podcast today, please subscribe, follow, rate the podcast. I am so open to feedback. So please be sure to DM me or comment your thoughts. And I can't wait to see you right here next week for another episode on 30 Flirty and Panicking.